Rocket is rated as a 1-star difficulty hero, and he's definitely easy to pick up and play, but there's more nuance to it if you want to put up amazing healing numbers while still getting eliminations. Let's talk about his playstyle first, and then we'll get into the individual abilities and tips. So, Rocket Raccoon is classified as a strategist in Marvel Rivals, so he's more of a support character focused on healing and buffing the team, and you generally want to be playing behind or above or to the side of your team, and you want to constantly pepper them with your healing orbs. You also want to try to give your team armor as often as possible and even revive them when you can. If you're playing with a well-coordinated team with voice comms and all that stuff, or maybe your friends, you can even use Rocket's excellent mobility as a way to scout and relay info back to your team. But just to be clear, you don't want to be on the front lines leading the charge or anything like that. After all, you only have 250 HP. What's great about Rocket is that he's super useful to the team without asking you to do a lot. So you still have to think about positioning and prioritizing heals, and you're still under threat because you're a support character. But because of how his healing works, you're focusing on the macro strategy and tactics as opposed to hardcore mechanical execution that a character like Spider-Man might have. And by the way, I also have a Spider-Man guide on my channel, be sure to check that out later as well. Now, we've been talking a lot about Rocket as a support so far, but let's switch gears just for a moment. Just because a character is support doesn't mean they can't do damage at all. Rocket's primary attack is the Bombard mode minigun that absolutely shreds enemies at close range and still does okay damage at distance. It enables you to contribute to eliminations and general damage when your team isn't necessarily needing any healing in that moment. Plus, you can take out destructible cover with your minigun. This weapon even has headshots, so low HP characters have to think twice about rushing you head on. For example, if there's a Spider-Man who doesn't really know what he's doing and he just kinda charges you face to face, you'll just melt him away with your minigun. One thing you should know is that the minigun's projectiles fire relatively slowly, and you'll have to account for that when you aim at distance. There's quite a bit of leading the target that you have to do, as in you're aiming where they're going to be as opposed to where they are. And sometimes this can feel maybe a little bit hit or miss depending on the connection quality of the match or your own skill level. Rocket's primary weapon is not one of those things where it's like fire and forget. You really have to be thinking as you're aiming. Let's move on now to Rocket's second normal attack, which isn't an attack at all. It's called Repair Mode, and you use your minigun to fire healing orbs that bounce around the walls many times, letting you constantly heal teammates without being glued to them. Honestly, these healing orbs are absolutely incredible, and I love them. Not only do they bounce around a lot, but they have a sizable area of effect, and they slow down when near an enemy that needs healing. Plus, you can always heal yourself with them. This all means that you don't have to be hyper precise with your healing, and that it's easy for you to heal teammates who are up in the air as well, such as Spider-Man or Iron Man. Other healers can sometimes struggle with this. What this also means is that when you play Rocket, you have absolutely no excuse for not putting up awesome healing numbers. It's so great because you can heal from distance, you can heal from impossible angles if you bounce around your orbs, you can heal air units. Best of all, you can keep yourself safe while doing all of this, and you can heal yourself if you need to. You can fire off a lot of orbs before reloading, and reloading doesn't take at all, so really you should just keep those orbs coming, keep healing your friends. And while Rocket's healing is his bread and butter, there's more to him that you should know about. So let's talk about his Battle Rebirth beacon. It's one of his most interesting abilities. You can place this beacon down, and every few seconds it'll spit out some armor and jetpacks for your teammates that kind of give them extra jumping mobility. Where this beacon really shines though is in the fact that it revives whoever gets eliminated next on your team within 50 meters after you place it down. So this means that you can use the beacon to turn fights on their head, but you just want to make sure that you're putting it in a relatively safe spot since it's easy for the enemy team to take out the beacon. It's also important to note that the hero that comes back through the beacon is going to end up spawning at the beacon's location. Now let me tell you two sort of kind of advanced or pro tips about the beacon that you definitely want to know. Tip number one, you should place the beacon at your spawn at the start of a match so your team can immediately start with some extra armor and mobility. And tip number two, once a beacon is active, you can recall it with the same button you used to throw it down with. This will give you a very short cooldown, and then you can put it somewhere else. This is especially useful because if you're following tip number one, you're going to want to move the beacon pretty quickly. And on top of that, the actual cooldown for the beacon is quite long, so recalling it just saves you so much time. Let's talk about another great support ability that Rocket has. It's his Cosmic Yarn Amplifier ultimate ability. It basically boils down to you throwing out an amplifier that gives a great damage boost to your teammates in a nice big radius. It's really simple to use and can help you win team fights, but not always in the way that you might imagine. So yeah, obviously it gives you a damage buff. But unlike the Rebirth beacon, you can throw down the Cosmic Yarn Amplifier in an extremely obvious spot during a team fight in order to bait the attention of your opponents. So while they take the time to destroy it, your team can focus on taking out the opposition. It's not like the Amplifier has a huge amount of health or anything like that, but those precious few seconds could end up making a huge difference in a tightly fought battle or when teams are really close in skill level. So yeah, it's great that the Amplifier can give you extra damage, but it's also great that it can distract your opponents. Now then, Rocket Raccoon wouldn't be himself if he couldn't scurry around the map like the totally not raccoon that he is, and if you hold jump up against the wall, you can climb it pretty quickly, making Rocket a really nimble character that can access parts of the map that aren't commonly trafficked. This is great because it can give you awesome new angles for healing, it can help you get out of trouble, or it can help you position yourself in a way that lets you relay info to the team, so you can be kind of a scout, but again, not a frontline scout. You also have the ability to float in the air with your jetpack just by holding jump, but just keep in mind, this doesn't work if you do a jump and then you try to hold it. It has to be from a bigger distance, from a greater height. These two abilities combine to give Rocket some awesome parkour skills and excellent mobility, but it gets even better. Rocket has a Jetpack Dash that quickly propels him in the direction of your crosshair, and you can use this offensively, so get to where you need to go quickly, or you can use this defensively to get out of a fight, keep yourself alive, keep healing your teammates afterwards. The distance it covers is pretty good, and you have 2 charges, both with individual cooldowns. And when you combine all of these abilities together, so the Jetpack Dash with the wall crawling and the floating, this really takes Rocket's mobility to the next level. He can just get around the map like nothing. And unlike some other characters in the game, these mobility options actually feel fun and good to use. Just remember, when you're getting into team fights or other sticky situations, keep an eye on your Jetpack Dash charges because you're going to need them. You kind of generally want to keep one in the chamber. You want to keep one available at all times if you can. Rocket's verticality makes him really versatile, but if you're kind of coming up against teams that maybe aren't as good as they should be or aren't as coordinated, then you don't necessarily need that verticality, but it's always a great option to have, and you'll find yourself using it when you're coming up against stronger opponents. Now let's move on to Rocket's weaknesses, and he obviously has very little health himself, just 250, so you can't really get into direct fights with competent opponents. His minigun takes some time to get used to and a fair bit of practice because of how much you have to lead targets, but most importantly, his biggest weakness isn't even his own weakness, it's the simple fact that other players will try to target support characters first. Skilled players and teams know how crucial it is to take out supports in order to win team fights, so you will always be chased after, you will always be bothered, assuming the other team knows what they're doing. This means that you always have to have an escape plan in mind and that you need to carefully manage your jetpack dashes and have really great awareness of your surroundings because you really need to worry about your positioning as Rocket Raccoon. But I think it's worth calling out that none of these weaknesses are deal breakers in any way. Rocket is great and he's a fun hero to play, but if you don't like the sound of his strategic nature or the pressure of this support role, then Rocket might not be for you. Oh, and by the way, Rocket has a cool team-up ability where he can actually ride Groot, just like in the movies and the comics, and he takes reduced damage and gives Groot extra health. But given that you want to play defensively with Rocket, this is not always advised. However, if you're in a team where you're gaining some momentum, you can kind of steamroll the opposition, this can be a handy way of being more involved in fights directly. Plus, you can just keep healing yourself in Groot. So a really good Rocket and a really good Groot together can make a powerful combination. Rocket can also throw down an infinite ammo device for the Punisher and the Winter Soldier as a team-up ability, and it gives them increased fire rates as well. Plus, if Rocket teams up with these guys, there's a nice 5% healing boost. Alright, now I want you to tell me, what do you think about Rocket Raccoon in Marvel Rivals? Have you been using him? Are you going to try him after this guide maybe? Do you think something about him needs changing? What would you want to change about him? I just want to know your thoughts about Rocket. Let me know in the comments down below, and let me know if you have any questions about him specifically, and if you want to see other Marvel Rivals videos like this. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.